You too, Beth. Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, April 17th of 2017, our city council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Shelley, you want to do roll call for us?
I can. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller, absent. Danforth? Here. Manti? Here. Riefenberger?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Thorson?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. At this time, before I ask for approval of the consent agenda, I wanted to wish my wife, Chris, a very happy birthday.
Oh.
And I'm not telling how old she is.
That's not old business, Mike.
So I will look for a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. Motion by Randy, second by Beth. Any questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number two, I'll look for approval of the agenda. Motion by Bill, second by Mike. Any questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number three, second reading of ordinance number 1712, amending section 21.2303 in chapter 21.90, the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown regarding the RG residential garage district. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to speak in favor of or against this is your opportunity. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I will look for a motion, a second for discussion. Motion by Dan, second by Beth. And Shane, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Just kind of brush over the highlights. This has been discussed many times over the last 2 months. This proposal began with the Planning Commission as they look for ways to enhance the availability of people to park their recreational vehicles in storage units off of the city streets and off of side yards, and et cetera. So this does only apply to the RG residential garage district. They allowed the maximum size of these structures to be 30% of the lot as a maximum. They also increased the height of the structures to allow for a 16-foot tall side wall. Then they enhanced the offset distance from a side yard to include an extra half a foot of setback for each additional foot above the 12-foot height. So a 9-foot setback would be increased with the new buildings. And they also included an articulated side if the wall length exceeds 20 feet. So that's the highlights. Any questions?
Any questions for Shane? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number four, ordinance number 1714, amending section 1.0501 of the revised ordinance of the city of Watertown to depict the correct statutory authority for the airport board. This is a second reading. I will look for a motion, a second for discussion. Motion by Don, second by Glenn. Okay, you want to take that one, Justin?
Be happy to, Mayor. Thank you. As the council will recall, there were two statutes in our state statutes that authorize the creation of a municipal airport board. One of those statutes was eliminated a few years back by the legislature for redundancy. It just so happened that that was the authority of the two that we had in our ordinances. This ordinance would merely, as a housekeeping measure, reinstate the proper statutory citation to authority There is no change in authority between these statutory citations, so the airport board, as it stands right now, will be fully empowered to do what it has done with this change in ordinance.
Any questions for Justin about this change or this ordinance?
Just basically a house cleaning measure.
Yes, sir, Councilman.
Okay, I do have a motion and a second on the floor. At this time, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, ordinance number 1715, amending section 19.07 of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown to regulate personal conveyances, including bicycles. This is a second reading. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike, second by Brad. And again, Justin, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor. The council will recall that between the work session when this ordinance concept was first proposed and then the first reading, there were concerns brought up about the scope of the changes initially set out. At the time, it was pretty straightforward. There would simply be a clarification of section 190704 to ensure that there wasn't any confusion regarding any prohibitions on biking on sidewalks. Since that conversation, there was a suggestion that it needed to be broadened and to include the entire chapter to regulate conveyances, personal conveyances that aren't necessarily regulated under state law but could impact pedestrians if ridden on the sidewalk improperly, could be a safety concern if ridden in such a way or used in such a way that it could endanger the rider themselves or others. So the way this ordinance now reads is to define what these personal conveyances are: rollerblades, roller skates, non-self-propelled scooters, meaning human-propelled scooters, and wheelchairs, electric personal assistive devices, which are defined in state law as Segway-like devices, and then to essentially apply the existing regulatory framework to an expanded list, not just bicycles, but to all of these personal conveyances. One item to point out in addition to that is that 190704 has added within it the explicit prohibition of operating Segway-like devices, those personal assistive devices, on city sidewalks. It turns out in state law that that is not prohibited, but state law explicitly allows municipalities to prohibit them from sidewalks. So that's what this language would do. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Tim, we're allowing you to ride your Segway on the sidewalks, though. There is an exception for law enforcement.
Any questions for Justin?
Yeah, they can't ride a Segway on the sidewalk. That's what you're saying?
That is
Okay. Why is that different than a bicycle again?
So the difference is a Segway is it's actually motorized to some extent. I mean, it is battery powered to allow for your momentum to help augment. It's my understanding. I'm by no means a scientist on that, but to augment the forward motion of the device. So in many ways, it is more of a motorized device than, say, a human-powered bicycle.
Justin and I have had a lot of conversations on this, but the only point of this that I would be hesitant to is where we allow them to go two abreast. And the only place I have concern is uptown. It seems like in the urban renewal district, you've got people coming out of those businesses, and we don't have a lot of sidewalk there. And it just seems like in that area, the two abreast thing should be frowned upon. I mean, I could be riding one of those tricycle things that's this wide, and I could be two abreast according to this. Trike bikes or whatever they call them. It just seems like with what little area we actually have from storefront to curb, it just seems like we should be frowning on that versus potentially encouraging it.
And I do think we do frown upon that, and I believe that the pedestrian has the right of way. They're supposed to
Yep.
give way to that.
There-
you know,
There
whether
is,
they will or not.
there is that provision, Mayor and Councilman. There's also that reference in 1907-05 as proposed that the personal conveyance shall not be ridden in a manner that may otherwise cause injury to the operator or other persons. It's sort of language akin to what we see with the careless driving ordinance for for motorized vehicles on the roads. It's broader, meant to encompass, those sorts of situations, really.
Okay, any other questions for Justin? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, ordinance number 1707, repealing section 19.0417, regulating parking in the uptown business district within and for the city of Watertown. This is a second reading. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Beth. Second by Randy. Justin, if you will.
Mayor, thank you. I won't belabor this conversation too much on my end here. You'll recall that this has been a long-running issue with the downtown area, that the Urban Renewal Board has taken multiple looks at this, that the council has taken multiple looks at this. This is the latest iteration to come out of the Urban Renewal Board. The suggestion from the Urban Renewal Board being laid out here in my memo, essentially focusing on the enforceability of the 2-hour ordinance provision, the fact that there aren't any signs up denoting it anymore. But that's certainly something that, is open to interpretation, is open to the council's discussion here. The only thing I would add is that I'd ask you to excuse the typo there at the bottom of the memo. It's page 1 of 1, not 1 of 2. There isn't any phantom page that was left off of the memo, so my apologies.
I would also encourage this body at some point in time, hopefully in the very near future, to maybe take a look at some of our parking in our parking lots. And let's take a look at leasing some of these spaces to the apartment owners where they would have a space where they can go park. Because right now, the issue that I'm seeing is apartment, folks that are in the apartments are parking there all day, all night, and they don't move their vehicle. This is unenforceable if we were to have a 2-hour parking. We've tried it in the past. But I do think that we should try to encourage that we could lease some parking to them and to get them off of the main roads and in front of the businesses, because it's frustrating when you're a business owner and there's a vehicle sitting there all day long and it's been there all night long. I do think that we need to do something.
You can look at it a couple different ways. I mean, not so much for the tenants. I totally agree with you 100%. And part of that needs to be done on the educational side. I mean, we need to be able to identify the people that have spent the money to renovate the uptown or the apartments up above their buildings and lease them out. We want to encourage that. But we need to identify those so we can get with them and try to do a little education. As far as not enforcing this, if you look at the 2-hour limit, if I want to go downtown, and we've spent so much money with trying to encourage people to come downtown. We did the art walk. We did things like that. Now, if I want to bring somebody downtown to show them off our downtown district and really spend some time, I can't do it in 2 hours. So that limits me of not being able to come downtown. That's where I think this ordinance really needs to go away.
Right. Now, we do have a shop owner in the audience. Are you okay with me allowing them to come in front of us and speak on this? Or, well, hang on, I'm asking Justin, or will it change our
Let me see.
you okay with that?
Let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be the decision of the chair.
Come on up, Bob. What's that?
That's right. Well,
Yeah. Hey, Bob, come on up and state your name, and you turn the mic on and you're ready to go.
Okay, my name is Bob Hoover, and contrary to what Steve's saying, my son now runs my business rather than myself because I am retired. And the reason that I did come up here to speak in regard to this, I've been located in the same position in the downtown area for 23 years. In that 23 years, I guess I've seen a lot. We had the original 2-hour parking, which I'll be honest with you, everybody hated. That was the same thing that Brookings has currently, which was if I remember, 5 till 2 or somewhere in that area, and then the no parking in between. All of the owners that I know in the uptown area agree that overnight parking was asinine, that it basically was for one reason, the joke of get the DUI, and that was it. It really didn't serve a whole lot of purpose. The only problem that most of us that I've talked to do have is that we request that you do something in regard to the parking, period. We did like the 8 to 5:30 rule, and I understand the fact that if you want to bring somebody uptown for a specific thing, that it may take over 2 hours, but in the most part, that's the exception, not the rule. As a business owner that sat down there, unfortunately, I blistered our mayor one day because a tenant of my next door neighbor sat right in front of my door for 5 straight days, and I was told there was nothing I could do about getting him out of my doorway. What I read in here basically says, true, you can't tell who a customer is. I mean, I can to a certain extent, because after 23 years, I can walk down Broadway and I can tell you the 16 owners, employees, and tenants that are going to be parked on Broadway every single day. They'll move for dinner, they may not move for dinner, and then they'll come back. And I know you say it causes disputes. It's a bigger dispute when I talk to the owner. He basically tells me to kiss his posterior because he doesn't have to do it. Now, the biggest problem that we run into in regard to enforcement, and I feel sorry for the gentleman sitting back here, is in the fact that previously we did have people that were doing it. When I first moved uptown, we had a gentleman that was coming around ticketing. I asked him how things were going. He says, watch this. He walked right out, walked up to a specific vehicle, told me whose it was, put a ticket on it, and said, now watch the newspaper. You tell me when you see his name in the newspaper, and it never showed up. The next 2 people that were employed in that same position, and the main reason I know these people, I'm not a retail store, so most of them would stop for a cup of coffee or a pop or something and visit. Both of them quit within 6 months. And for one reason, they got sick and tired of getting their butts chewed out because they were putting tickets on the wrong cars. And this is where the problem comes in. You can't have exceptions. Now, to me, I don't care one way or another because I'm not downtown other than the shop. And it doesn't take me 2 hours to do anything. And I don't know of any business that normally has a customer take over 2 hours to do business other than maybe the little beauty shop. Because I can't remember, my mother used to be a beauty operator, and it took longer to do a dye, a cut, and a perm, or something like that. It might. The Monday through Friday, for most of us, is not a big deal as far as 2-hour parking during the daytime. If you're looking at a weekend, to me it's real difficult again. Because of the fact that is when the majority of the things occur. That is the shows that are downtown, that's the dart tournaments, the pool tournaments, and the things that you can't regulate within 2 hours, and Sunday basically nobody's open. Now when you talk about whether it affects a business or not, I look at the building that I'm located in. You have a half a block from the corner of Broadway to the alley. In that one building are 6 businesses. In the time that I have been uptown, we have had 25 different businesses located in that one building. Anybody that drives uptown, you will notice that the majority of it has changed within the last 10 years. I got a kick out of it because right here, this is our current one, has a business listed on it, and our building that's no longer there. They weren't even in business for 2 years. And I would guarantee none of you sitting here tonight would want to visit with that business owner, because she was so mad at the parking thing in the same situation. The day I stopped to visit with her, it's like, I said, what are your problems? She said, that vehicle, and that vehicle. They sit here all day, my customers can't get to my place, and if this keeps up, I quit. And she did. And that's the same problem that we have throughout the uptown area. Now, I speak mostly in the Broadway, north and south, and first west to first east, because I've seen that, like I say, for 23 years. The only thing that I would ask is that you seriously, seriously look at, is this truly what the uptown business people want? And the only way you're going to find out is actually take a survey of the people that are up there. I know Chief Vitek did it, back in 2013, but this is kind of a misnomer as to what it shows, because it says community parking, 30% of the people had it as a concern, no parking 2 to 5, 24%, and only 2-hour parking, 21%. The community parking that they were talking to her about was the fact that their neighbors were parking in front of your places. So my suggestion is to please, before you actually implement this, visit with the owners uptown to make sure it's exactly what they want. And personally, if you can't afford to do it, I'll do it for free for you. Because my concern is, as a businessman that loves the downtown area, I don't want to see any more businesses come and go.
Bob, I'm just going to throw this out because you know as well as I that I had my business downtown for a long time. And frankly, nothing has changed in 25 years.
No, it hasn't.
When Jim used to walk down, he'd chalk your tires. And I would see shop owners, I probably did it myself a time or two, that, oh, he's going to be back shortly. Let's move my car around the corner. So it didn't work. There's no enforcement.
And I
of
agree,
2
that's what I
hours.
say. It's really difficult. The only way, that you can actually stop that is if you're directly taking it up with the business owners. And it's almost a threat.
So it doesn't really,
That doesn't work.
so it doesn't really make any difference if there's 2-hour parking.
No. But I'm just saying I would visit with the business owners just to make sure that that is true or not.
The thing,
And this is me personally speaking right now.
out of total respect for you, Bob, I mean, I appreciate you coming up here. But we basically eliminated it 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard a single peep out of anybody until it came up in the paper on the agenda.
Mainly because, and if you want the honest truth, most people say it doesn't make a cotton picking bit of difference, because if they mention something to you, you're not going to do anything anyway.
One of the
That's what
things,
I've heard
Bob,
from business owners.
One of the things, if I may, the urban renewal meets, every month or so. I was here at most of these when they were talking about it. There was like nobody here.
Last time we brought it up in the urban renewal, there wasn't anybody here to speak against it.
And you would have thought
The
that
main
would
one
have
that
been
you've
the
had come
time.
in here for most of them was Gary Young, and he has represented me and a half a dozen other businesses. He was actually supposed to be here this evening to do this, and he got caught coming from Sioux Falls, and that's why I'm here,
So
unfortunately.
what would your suggestion be how to correct this? That's
I'll be honest with you, there is no solution. There absolutely is no.
that's kind of the thing that we've been up against for a long time. And you can say we don't listen, but there isn't a solution. I mean, we got an ordinance on the books that doesn't make any sense because there's no solution to that ordinance.
I mean, like you say, like Steve is saying, yes, I watch my neighbors, same thing. You can see him watch the person go by, tag his tires, and you're gonna leave for exactly that 2 hours and turn around and come back.
Yep. Either that or they're going to move it over one spot and go back into their business, and that's just,
And again, what that's doing is causing, a lot of grief with the uptown owners.
Yeah.
Because, literally, I wanted to go out and slash his tires. I wanted to literally take some teeth out, especially the day that the truck sat there for 5 days, and I was told there was nothing I could do about it.
and
that
that is part of our ordinance that's broke that we do need to
I know it
address.
is, yeah. And that's why I'm
Because-
making you aware of that.
Yep.
Tim, write his name down.
I was just going to say, I was actually going to give him the benefit of the doubt and ask Tim to ignore that statement.
I'll be honest with you, since I moved to town 15 years ago, I have walked to work every day. And 2 weeks ago, my son went on vacation, I ran the business. Me and yet the same 2 ladies that parked in the parking lot with me back 15 years ago are the only 3 people that are parking in that same city lot. Which is a sad state of affairs, because when you're talking about a rental or that of the city parking lots for some of the people, yes, the uptown area does definitely need more development when it comes to the upper areas of it, and there are some people that are willing to at least invest money into it. The only thing I would say is when I look at the city of Mitchell, for example, the city of Mitchell over the years has been highly successful when it comes to that development. And the only reason why is every time they get a building that burns or there's something wrong with it, the city buys it and turns it into a parking lot. There are very few streets that you can't go down that they don't have a city-owned parking lot for that purpose. And
They-
and it is used by the tenants.
They also got that big bird feeder downtown that helps them a lot,
You
so.
aren't kidding. I
Yeah.
used to live right next to that.
Couple things, and I think you're hitting all the points that, have been discussed for the last probably 15 years,
15 years, yes.
And I've been involved with urban rural for 10, so you got 5 years on me. But, I think everything's been said. I wanted to do a little bit of the same thing you did, and I went and talked to a variety of people, whether they were people who used the, downtown, or who actually lived there or owned a building or whatever. And one of the gals I talked to, she was in her 70s. I asked, why do you go downtown? Dining, retail, and she has insurance down there. And I said, does parking, where you park, cause you any problem? And she said, no, unless it's icy. Then she reschedules her appointment, and if we put parallel parking up there, she won't come downtown. But anyway, then there was a couple in their 30s who primarily go up there for dining, entertainment, and shopping. They said they have never changed their mind about a destination based on where they have to park. I spoke with a person who's a resident, building owner, and landlord. She thought that this had been done a long time ago and wondered why we were still talking about it. And she said she likes the feel of not having limitations for people downtown. She also instructs her tenants to park away from business fronts, and she kind of keeps an eye on that. And she said, keep downtown moving, the busier the better. Another building owner in that same neighborhood where the person left said that, yes, there's a lot of parking being taken up on her block, and she said it's a pain once in a while, but her customers have never left because of it. In fact, she's getting busier and has had to add new staff. And another one said business owner and landlord thought that this was also passed a long time ago, works fine for her, has off-street parking for tenant. And so I just wanted to get a kind of a cross-section of what people were thinking about, and it wasn't just the people who lived and worked there. I wanted to know what people who came downtown to shop. And so I was starting to get the sense that people were willing to park where they needed to go where they wanted to shop. And so I think Steve hit the nail on the head too about getting some leasing for tenants. I think that some of them are already trying to help with that. I know there has been some off-street parking created, but it's a long ways to go. But again, I just wanted to offer another discussion that I had with some people too.
Okay.
I think,
Well, Bob, I thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for
I'm gonna
coming
move
up.
on and-
I appreciate
this,
at least the time to be able to discuss it, because like I say, it is still a concern.
Yeah.
And the worst part of it is when you have one of the worst offenders has his own parking lot, and yet you still have,
Right.
four vehicles parked right out there.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, at least if nothing else, you just send a letter around to them and remind them,
Very good.
please,
Yep.
Yep.
As a-
like
as
Be good to your
as a-
neighbor.
We can do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bob.
Okay, I believe I have a motion and a second on the floor. At this time, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Number 7, first reading of ordinance number 1717, amending chapter 3.01 to clarify the regulation of service animals, assistance animals, police dogs, and kennels. This is a first reading. I'm not going to spend very much time at all on any of these 3 that are coming up, or 4. So if you spend just a short minute on them.
I'll keep it tight,
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you.
This ordinance here is brought back for a first reading again because my mistake. There was a page that was not included in the last iteration of this when it was brought before you. So not only do we have that page in here, but we also have all the notations next to each provision that was changed. So you have comment bubbles showing why these were changed, making reference to the authority as to why it needed to be changed. In short, changed these ordinances to reflect federal statute, changing federal law with regard to service animals and assistance animals, and we tried to address issues with dog kennels and distinguishing between commercial kennels versus plain old dog houses, less onerous regulations on plain old dog houses. So that's a
Okay.
50,000-foot
Very
perspective.
good. Thanks, Justin.
Yep.
I want to move on. Number 8, first reading of ordinance number 1716, repealing chapter 7.11 of the revised ordinance of the City of Watertown regarding city participants in the defunct South Dakota Municipal Retirement System Same thing, Justin.
Will do, Mayor. This is housekeeping. What it's meant to do is get rid of an antiquated reference. We are currently participants in the South Dakota retirement system. This does not change that one iota. In fact, as my memo explains, that participation is now mandatory. So,
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to number 9, first reading of ordinance number 1719, amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning the CACS first edition from R3 multifamily residential district to R1 single-family residential district.
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, will you put my screen up on the board? The city received a petition from owner Steve Horning for the CACS Lakeside Edition Incorporated. The petition is to rezone a few lots from R3 multifamily residential district to R1 single-family residential district, and the area depicted in the bold line with the yellow hatching is the area that's scheduled to be rezoned, and the intention is that we will also receive a new plat for that area to divide the lots into the appropriate size R1 lots. So with that, I'll leave it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Shane. We'll move on to number 10, first reading of ordinance number 1720, amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning Slominski's second edition from C2 local commercial district to R3 multifamily residential district.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. My screen's still up? All right. We received a petition from the owners James K. Lindsay Revocable Trust and Sweet Properties LLC, who is an interested party. The idea is that they want to change the zone from C2 commercial to be rezoned to R3 multifamily, and basically it's an expansion of the existing R3 district to the immediately to the west of this property. This is along First Avenue Northeast, near the intersection of 19th Street East. And again, this was entertained by the Planning Commission and approved for your entertainment.
Entertainment, there you go, showtime. All right, number 11, repeal or carryover of capital outlay appropriations from the 2016 fiscal year, resolution number 1708. Shelley, do you want me to get a motion a second for discussion? Let's do that. Let's get a motion a second for discussion. Motion by Randy, second by Dan. Okay, Shell.
Thank you, Mayor. I will also be very brief. This is something that comes before you every year. As it's stated in here, Home Rule Charter does allow for us to carry over any capital budget, not any operating or personnel, just capital budgets, for projects that are either not completed or were not started during that budget year. It allows you to carry them over for 3 years or until the project is complete. Anything that we don't carry over, that budget lapses and they would have to be rebudgeted in a future year. And there's just one other, it's kind of an accounting Scrivener's error. Nobody would really know except for Connie when she tries to put these adjustments in. Under the 26th Street East improvements line item, it should be $431.80 instead of $432.80, and it should be $439.82 instead of $439.60. So I apologize for that, but otherwise the 26th Street improvement and the $184,000, that is correct. So if anybody has any questions on any particular item, you can ask them.
Shelley, is the skateboard part not going to happen?
It is going to happen, but
Not this year.
No, it will this year.
yeah, it's getting carried over to 2017. It just didn't happen in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
Shelley, all those items that are on that list, are any of those projects done to their original scope? And then this is a remaining balance in regards to what was left over from the budget? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and as far as I'm aware, we're supposed to call those out, and it's council that needs to authorize those to, because then they wouldn't be in the same line item. They would be reappropriated to another line items somewhere in the 2017 budget. So my understanding is that they're either continuations or, for instance, like under the capital improvement 212, 431, 80, 43100 land. We never really specified a project, but any appraisals, any land purchase opportunities are used under this budget. That also comes back before the council to spend any of those appropriations. In, I think, last year's budget, that was determined that we would just keep using that until we decided we didn't have a use for that. So those type of things are in there. But
That's somewhat of an accrual, so to speak, until
right,
when we know.
right,
But
yep.
for
But
issues that are outside of that, they're actual projects, known projects that are defined.
no,
are
from
there
my
dollars?
knowledge, what these are being carried over for is what these are going to be used for in these line items, and they haven't been reappropriated for another item. I was
Still
not told of
within-
them.
In every one of those, still within the original scope of work that was to be done, and it's not a carryover of dollars, and they'll find some place to spend it within that project.
Correct. Yep, that's not allowable.
Okay, any other questions for Shelley on this? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 12, Plateau the Morris, first edition resolution number 1711. I'm going to look for a motion and a second for discussion, then we'll have Shane go through that.
So moved.
Motion by John, second by Glenn. Okay. Go ahead, Shane.
Thank you, Mayor. The Morris family is the owner of the property. They petitioned, the petitioners submitted a plat on March 17th, 2017, requesting approval for the Morris First Edition plat, The plan was brought before the Planning Commission at their February 23rd meeting. That was approved at that meeting with certain conditions, which are included in the development agreement, which you will entertain after this motion. The plat of the Morris First Edition was approved on April 6, 2017 by said Plan Commission. The zoning is intended to be C3 Highway Commercial District. The plan will create 8 lots in conformance with the zoning requirements for said zoning. The proposed right-of-way for the streets is 66 feet in conformance with city standards, and detention ponds will be required to hold the 2-year capacity volume for the Willow Creek watershed. With that, I'll ask any
Okay,
questions.
any questions for Shane on this?
Shane, I do have a question on this. The access that comes out to the north onto Willow Creek Drive, for the lots that will be to the east of that will be along Willow Creek Drive, will they be allowed to have access from Willow Creek, or will they need to go on to, what is this, 26th? Will they need to go into the development to get to those properties?
They, according to the standards that we set for our driveway widths, there is the potential for a driveway over to the east of 26th Street because it has the proper distance. And we would anticipate that that may be a shared driveway with between 2 lots. But in short, there is one access that can be allowed on Lot 1 in this,
And
off of either street.
And it kind of depends also on what goes in there, because I know those 2 lots have been sold based on this. So if there's something that's going in there that's quite large, they may not want ins and outs. And we have to be very careful, because all of a sudden you're coming down on that, and then you have the curve coming over there. We need to be very careful about how we access onto Willow Creek Drive for just safety reasons, you know.
Well, that's where I'm coming from, Mayor, is
That's
there's,
going to be a problem.
that is a
in
concern of
corner
mine.
lot. You're going to have a problem that it's a huge lot. It's on the corner. You're not going to put an access on the curve for the reasons the mayor just stated. Unless they have a line going through there in the middle, I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, my guess is that, well, I can say I know there's some things in the works right now on those 2 lots, and I think we can work that out so they can come out from the south or through the north. I really don't think those lots are going to have that access. We just got to be very, very careful.
Right, that's correct. And if you look at the drawing I have up here now, this is the proposed location of 26th Street, it is a long ways over to the next intersection of 8th Avenue, so we will have to allow some metered access points along that distance, otherwise it's just too great a distance. Our anticipation is that they're gonna be typically about a block apart, so, you know, in that 350 to 400 foot range between.
What's the plan for the speed on, I know we reduced it coming off of 212. I don't know where that ends actually.
About right in here.
Right in there. What is the longer term look at the speed on that street all the way over to 19th?
I would think that when we start getting this developed more, and the more the traffic is coming in and out of this development, it's going to be entirely probably 35 all the way through, because 45 is awfully fast.
That would be my
But it's awfully
anticipation.
slow right now, since there's nothing there. 45 is kind of slow. I seen Don the other day going like 60. Maybe not. Maybe not.
I just
No,
think
it's
I think
but-
that
but
access.
it will have to be slowed down.
I think the access is a concern of mine onto that road, because there's getting to be more and more and more traffic there. I mean, I like to see that. That's what the intention of that road was, in part. But it is going to present challenges in regards to access, not so much into, but out of those properties, so.
Let me just add, we're not voting on the corner tonight, right? Okay, but the fact that they don't have a street drawn through the middle of two lots is gonna cause a potential issue on the corner. We need to be aware of that.
Yep, and these are extremely large lots. I mean, we're talking about a 3.65 acre lot one. So, you know, if you've got one large business in there, if they have one driveway out there, it's not like you have 15 driveways coming in that distance. So again, our plan is to just meter those driveways out and push them to have combined driveways, especially where we can, so.
Right.
By the way, these are the same concerns that Shane's been talking to the Plan Commission about too, the exits. How do you get driveways out there where? And he basically says it just depends, and that's not a great I mean, that's the right answer, but it doesn't really.
I agree with Steve that it does depend a lot on what goes in there, you know, what business is in there.
One of the things we have to be aware of, though, is that when the original development agreement went through, they did have those numbers already in place in the development agreement that the city of Watertown agreed to. So we have to be aware of those things also, that they're on the table. So if there's no other questions, I believe we have a motion and a second on the floor. I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 13 follows right along with it. It's authorization for the mayor to sign a development agreement for the Morris First Edition. I will entertain a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Randy, second by Beth. Shane, if you will do this then for us.
Yeah, this development agreement fits pretty much our standard development agreements that we've been doing on commercial properties, especially in this East Park area. And it covers all of the questions that were entertained at the Planning Commission and covers all of our typical basis as to who's paying for what public infrastructure, et cetera. So I guess I'll leave it at that unless you have some questions.
Any questions for Shane on this? This also includes anything that, you know, you talked about water retaining, things such as that. That's all in the development agreement.
Right. It talks about who's paying for what. There's streets, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, grading, drainage, municipal utilities, sidewalks, recreation trails, and some other general provisions. So.
Very good. Any questions for Shane on this?
Is there any stipulation as to, I know the whole sidewalk, bike trail thing, is there any definition today of what that's going to be in here, or is that yet to be determined?
The preliminary plan showed sidewalk on both sides of the street.
Because I will tell you that the bike trail along First Avenue or Willow Creek, it just seems like, I know we use it as a bike trail, but it seems a little odd to me that we would go right in front of all these retail businesses with a bike trail and set of sidewalks, and because sidewalks can be used for bikes. I'd like to see us go more to the sidewalks in these types of areas than to actually put a bike trail out in front of them.
So there is, I mean, again, the preliminary plan did show sidewalks along both sides of the street. And I can't divulge too many details at this time because it's just a concept discussion, but I have started conversations with the developers in that region to start to identify where the potential areas for extending the bike trail down from along Willow Creek to the south may exist. And so we've started talking about that. We don't have anything concrete or defined at this point, but it is a goal of not only myself, but the Parks and Rec Board as well, to ultimately have the bike trail system extend to the south and wrap around back to the west and connect back up by the softball complex and the Anza sports complex. So it's a long-range goal that we have to recognize. The trail system's got to be completed.
It is. One of the things, though, I think that we need to be aware of is that when somebody puts in sidewalk in front of their place, we expect them to remove the snow. But yet on our bike trails, we don't do anything. So I think we need to look at that, Rob. I'm just saying, okay? Yeah. We need to make sure that those bike trails in certain areas out there are open to the public to be walking. I know that the Park and Rec has taken care of some of them, but that's a busy road out there, and we can't have them walking on Willow Creek Drive. Just so,
Shane,
I'm just going to throw that out there.
we were made aware of one in our area, a dangerous area. Is there how do you make the idea, what's the plan for dangerous areas versus adding more bike trails? Is that just when you hear about them, or what's the plan?
Well, we don't, I hate to say that we don't have a plan, but we don't have a completely written out plan that identifies those type of things. And I think whenever we do an update to our use and plan of our whole community, that needs to be updated as well. So, and our comp plans should identify our priorities on our bike trails. And one thing that we've also started discussing is the potential of getting projects earmarked for the safe routes to schools, which would then concentrate in those areas that are closest to school districts and try to utilize that kind of funds that are available too. So we are talking about it. I can't say that I have a specific plan that's in place or in motion yet, but we have started to identify those and we'll prioritize them.
Just a comment, just to follow up with Dan. I think I know what area you have in mind, because I have the same one, and it was brought to my attention too that those areas that do present a hazard definitely need to be looked at sooner rather than later.
Right. I just received a note this week on an area along the airport that I actually already have a plan drawn up and a schedule. I have to meet with the Parks Board and find out when they want to implement that. So
And I think it would be a good work session discussion where we're going with all our bike trails and what's, the priority listing for them. So I do have a motion and a second on the floor for the authorization for the mayor to sign a development agreement for the Morris First Edition. So if there's no other questions, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, authorization for the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with Great Plains sponsorship to market Prairie Lakes Wellness Center sponsorships. I tell you what, Ryan, I'm going to have you come up. There'll probably be a few more questions, but I'm going to get a motion and a second for discussion on this matter. And I think what we need to do before you get going here, one of the things we need to do is we need to take a look at this. There's two options. Option one is to entertain a substitute motion to authorize the mayor to sign a proposal for professional services with Great Plains sponsorship to market Prairie Lakes Wellness Center sponsorships with any binding contract to be brought before the city council for authorization at a later meeting. Option two would be a motion that would be, I would entertain a substitute motion to authorize the mayor to sign a proposal for professional services with Great Plains sponsorships to market Prairie Lakes Wellness Center sponsorships with the following terms that would be included on that. And Justin, if you want to fill in any of the blanks on that for this particular motion?
Just for procedural purposes, Mayor, I believe that there needs to be a motion on the floor suggested before a substitute motion can be entertained.
Okay, so we will look for a motion for option one, which was to entertain a let's get to one here. It says here, motion language, agenda 14.
Yep.
After motion, a second is taken to engage in discussion. So what do you want?
So the agenda item currently on the floor are that could potentially be considered as what is on the agenda, and so a motion could proceed given what's depicted on the agenda.
Okay,
Where
so
the-
that's where we're at right now. So I do have a motion by, was it Randy? Mike made it. I'm looking for a second. So I have a second by Bill for discussion. Now, let's go ahead and let's talk about this a little bit and just see where we're at. And again, Ryan, there'll probably be some questions that come in front of you here.
Mayor, I'd like to ask a question. We actually had two different proposals in front of us. Mike, which proposal? Okay, just want to make.
So it's got pretty quiet up here, didn't it?
Well, just another question. Does it, any conflict with the agreements we have with Prairie Lakes? There any?
No,
What
there-
restrictions do we have there?
Actually, he's going to be working extremely close with Prairie Lakes if he's talking to sponsors, because they have to give that okay in order for, let's say he went to MGT and they wanted to give dollars, that would have to be approved by Prairie Lakes on their side also. Yeah.
Currently, as we have this motion, though, we're talking about him going out and soliciting sponsors,
Well,
as opposed to put
first
together
thing-
a possible value that we might ask.
no, I think the first thing, tell us, Ryan, you light it up and tell us what the first thing you're going to be doing.
Okay, so am I on the wrong microphone here? There we go. This works. So as far as the two options go, in either scenario, I will do an evaluation and an analysis, and really kind of come in and look at every quantitative benefit, qualitative benefit, all the assets, identify new assets, look at current assets, and then what I do with that is either I go to market with it, and I would take that and with my my team, if I need one, which I'm not sure that I would, but I would go and execute sales. Otherwise, the first option is giving that evaluation to you as a city, and then between yourselves and Prairie Lakes, you can do with that as you please. So there's been a couple good examples of where I've done that in the past, where with like the Washington Pavilion Performing Arts Center in Sioux Falls, they had the wherewithal and they had the amount of employees to where they could conduct the sales themselves. So instead of, paying my firm what it would cost to, have us conduct the sales, we really kind of just understood there was no point in that, and they took the evaluation, which I've kind of put into color in the one-page document we talked about earlier, which comes out to be a comprehensive analysis, a presentation that you guys can actually kind of plug and play and take to businesses, an inventory catalog that identifies all the assets you have that maybe you knew you had, and there's going to be a lot that you don't know you have, and how to put together comprehensive partnerships for regional companies and maximize the revenue to the fullest.
Right. My guess is I would like to see the evaluation, and then, of course, we'll come back and, frankly, to pay a commission for something, we've got something in return rather than no commission and no sales. I mean, there's a huge advantage for us to do that. That would be my recommendation that we do on this.
I think for the first go-round, we're talking about sometime between mid-June to July 1st, somewhere in that time frame where you would think you'd have a product to us to look at, right? Your assessment.
Depending on when the approval is, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, I'm with you, let's, on this first go-round, let's focus on Prairie Lakes Wellness. Let's get that in, see what it looks like. At that point, then, Ryan, we're going to know what you're suggesting are items or areas that we can create revenue with, what their approximate value is from your work, correct?
Yes.
So we're gonna know what that total package looks like.
Yes, you'll have every tool you need
Right.
at that point to basically decide, aside from the presentation and maybe the inventory catalog, which an inventory catalog is a very detailed sheet of your assets. Those are things that are proprietary until you say, we don't really need you. I would give those to you, and you'd have that intellectual property to say, we're going to take this presentation and make it our own. But yeah, so you'll have the tools to go, hey, can we do this ourselves with this evaluation and what he's going to provide us? Or is it something that seems like it's a little more comprehensive than you want to undertake?
And I think we'll know a lot more in 60 days as to what it looks like, and then we can determine where we want to apply it as far as the softball facility, and then that would be good timing as we look to go into the ice. That's what I would recommend that we do.
Not only that, you get a chance to look at it, and then you can decide, are we capable of doing, I mean, can we get the maximum amount of dollars compared to what we feel his firm can do? You know,
And
that's what they
and-
specialize in, so.
And just in transparency, that's in Sioux Falls and in other cities, that's the way that they've done it, is kind of let us look at it, let us discuss it, whether with me or internally. And I think the good news is we operate on good faith, and I think a lot of these other cities would attest to that. So if you get 30 days in thinking that you could undertake it and realize you can't, well, they know how to get a hold of me, and we can always circle back then.
Yeah, Mike, I would agree. My comment was, as the way this motion reads, it reads to me that we're giving him, the agreement is for him to market sponsorships. That's not what we're talking about doing.
No, Bill, if you read through the proposal, that's a second option within the
No,
proposal.
I just mean that the current, motions we made, it says that we need to make a second motion. This motion to me says that we're agreeing to have him market sponsorships. The way the motion is written, Justin, I guess we need your help.
Well, can't we just,
Do we need to have a different motion to say just?
well, I knew what the
we wanna have-
intention was, so I get where you're coming from in reading it, but to create the market
Well,
information
this is
for
what I
us.
want to do too, but that's what when I read
Yeah,
this,
how
I
about
was
if you,
confused.
how about if you were to change this to make your substitute motion, to entertain a substitute motion to authorize the mayor to sign a proposal for professional services with Great Plains sponsorship?
Well, that's,
It's kind of
that
the
could
same
be,
way.
well,
For the wellness center.
it's not,
Perhaps it could be a professional evaluation.
right, that's what it is.
Or
It's
an
an
analysis.
assessment.
And it's also, so in the industry, whether this matters, it might matter to you, it's a evaluation or a valuation. It's kind of all of the above. So it's an evaluation of the market, it's a valuation of assets, and then it's an analysis of, so you could take all that and put it into one word or use them all to
Right.
cover your bases.
Sure.
So do we need to modify? Do we all understand what we are
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah,
As long as we understand it, aren't we good?
But I just concerned about the way the
Yeah.
motion that I was, referring
Mr.
to.
Getz, are we good if we
Justin,
all
you-
understand, or does that need to be changed?
My understanding is that option A is essentially what is being discussed right now. And so in terms of embellishing any additional terms to it, if you're content with the terms as provided here, this proposal is effectively, in legal parlance, a term sheet, which if you feel that these are the necessary terms as presented to you, then you can authorize the mayor to sign an agreement that incorporates those terms. And that would then permit us to be able to produce a contract and have it signed with the terms that the council has authorized. That would be in keeping with SDCL 9-1-5, as you have provided the terms for the contract and have authorized the mayor to sign that contract with those
Yeah.
terms.
So you're good to go with what we have as a motion on the floor? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
And when it comes to technicalities, I'll go on record as saying that if you guys need to produce an addendum that comes to this, that something was
Perfect.
worded incorrectly, we'll accommodate.
Okay.
I've got a couple questions and a comment in here. Justin, I want to make sure now, with what we're going to vote on, does that have to come back again now at the next council meeting? Or we're good to go so Ryan can hit the ground running tomorrow morning if he wants to?
We would need to have that agreement. That's right. We would need to have the agreement and then get it signed, and then once it's signed, then he can hit the ground running.
Doesn't have to come back to us another time?
No, it does not. So long as that agreement encapsulates option A, it can be signed. And as long as the council agrees to those terms in option A as depicted.
Oh,
Anytime it'd have to go past option A, though, then it'd have to come back to council, right?
That is my understanding, Councilman.
okay. Okay, now my comment. I want to apologize to my colleagues and to Justin and to the mayor and Ryan. This moved awfully fast from last Tuesday evening about 7 o'clock. Had to get things to Shelley or whoever puts the agenda together. So there were some moving pieces there that probably didn't quite come together the way it should have, and I'll take full responsibility for that in light of how the whole process moved within the last few days. I hope we're on the right track. I like what I'm hearing, but now I do have a question for you, Ryan. Okay, these are professional services. We don't have to go out for bid on that. I understand that. But normally we would probably put an RFP out and see, who else is out there in the industry that could do the same sort of work. Tell us why we're comfortable, why we don't have to do that, or why you don't think we have to go down that route and contract with you right now.
Certainly, great question, and I think I've answered it before. And to answer for the council, I think, I don't think. So I know that when it comes to projects like this, I've not come across any other firms anywhere in this region that do what I do. All Great Plains Sponsorships does is sponsorships and naming rights. The firms that you would find that also do that are companies such as Van Wagner, Learfield, and Legends, my predecessor, the company that I used to work for. And they're more focused on NFL stadiums, NHL stadiums, MLB stadiums, international soccer. And so as I was coming away from my former company, what I was finding is they were actually turning down what I thought were big projects in Sioux Falls, not because they didn't like Sioux Falls or anything like that. They're just, quote unquote, wasn't enough meat on the bone. So as I saw them starting to stray away from projects such as the Aquatic Center, that was a twisting an arm to get them to do that, even though it became out to be a great thing. There were a lot of other projects that came along that they didn't have the time or the capacity they felt to do that were worth the dollar. So that's the main reason. But the other, I would say, is that if you did go out for RFP, what'll come back is potentially marketing companies that have the capabilities to do amazing things such as websites and graphic design, but they've never done sponsorships, and they'll throw their name in the ring, and they wouldn't know how to price it. They have no experience in it, and it's really kind of getting they're getting way out of there. It'd be like me trying to sit here and pitch you guys to let me do search engine optimization for you. I wouldn't. It would come out terrible. So, we only specialize in one thing, and we're the only company, I believe, in any state that borders this state that does that. So, that's where I would go, and I'd encourage you to do research that will testify to that. So,
Okay, I think we're going to move forward, and I believe I have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan.
thank you.
Number 15, authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Mike Sheehan doing business as drive-by signs for a permit to maintain a billboard on city property. At this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Don, second by Beth. Justin, if you want to do this for me.
I'd be happy to, Mayor. So this situation arose out of a big whoops, to put it in non-legal parlance terms. About 2 months ago, I was approached by municipal utilities staff who just commented and said, there's this billboard out there. It appears to be on city property. Could you take a look at this? And so I got an idea of where it was at, went and did the legal research at the Register of Deeds office, and came to find that there didn't appear to be any kind of agreement, whether at the Register of Deeds office or at City Hall, memorializing, somehow allowing, permitting, what have you, this billboard to be where it was. And so came to discover that this piece of land, which is denoted on Exhibit A, and we have a GIS depiction of it, as well as a platted depiction of it, had come into possession by the city in 2003 after being transferred from this by the state of South Dakota. Prior to that, it had been a part of DM&E right-of-way. And it is somewhere in that milieu of ownership with the DM&E that, in talking with Mike Sheehan, the sign had been placed up there. And it was Mr. Sheehan's understanding that that sign had been placed up there lawfully, or per contract with DM&E. He explained to me that there was, at the time, discussions with DM&E to purchase that land, and somehow the sign had been put up there, but none of the ownership, indices of ownership had ever been vested in Sheehan's billboard company. So all that is laid out here in the whereas clauses in the agreement before you. And basically, it's a question of what to do going forward. The agreement as it stands, and I would note that the first paragraph there should be changed over to Mike Sheehan as opposed to his son Eric. Mike will be signing this if the city council agrees with the language. What this lays out is that licensee is to maintain a sign for the benefit of the city that advertises a city department, advertises something of the city of Watertown interest, be it a PSA or what have you, on that billboard. And for then the next 5 years, with an option for Mr. Sheehan to renew for another 5 years, that sign must be maintained, must be to code, must have all utilities and maintenance paid for by Sheehan's operation. And the city gets to sign off on what gets placed up there. The city, in response, would provide a permit, effectively this agreement, saying you can have this billboard on city property. The city warrants that it will allow a period of 60 days for Sheehan's to replace any defective signage. And the city would then allow for Sheehan's company to access the sign on a limited basis to be able to make those improvements or to make those maintenance, to maintain the sign. Also, the city would waive then any claim, and that's not saying that we have one. I haven't thoroughly researched this sufficiently, but would be happy to, that we would have a claim against Sheehan's for the sign being on our property for now the last 13 years, almost 14. I mentioned the term. The right of termination is vested in Sheehan's whenever he so chooses, but he then must remove the sign. Whenever this contract is terminated, he would have to remove the sign. The city may terminate only upon breach that isn't cured within 30 days. That would include all the provisions, though, including licensed sign, repaired sign, sign that depicts city department interests, city interests, and the like. We have a full indemnification for the city, for the benefit of the city from Sheehan's regarding the sign. And beyond that, I guess I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Justin. Any questions for Justin at this time?
So the billboard's going to stay there, and it's going to have something on the city's, pertaining to the city in some way. We don't pay for that, correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
Yeah, you could have something like the Bramble Park Zoo, you know, 1 mile ahead or something.
Yep.
You could do a lot of stuff and show otters and stuff like that on there.
Yeah.
Justin, if that blows down, what would happen then? You know, let's just say it blows down and would that automatically, he could just put up a new sign, or would he come back, or what would be the?
He could put that sign back up, Councilman, but it would have to be under the terms of the agreement. In other words, that sign would then have to still depict a city.
Justin, is that a
Interested.
single-sided sign, or is that dual?
It's each side, there's two
Each
sides.
side.
Yeah, that is my understanding.
Four
too.
total faces
Yeah.
on it.
So both
Is it four or
sides,
two? Can
I-
you put it
I-
up there?
Can we pull that up? That's my understanding too, Councilman.
so, well, if there's four, say,
So if there's 4 faces, are we talking about one of those faces would be dedicated to the city? Is that what you're saying?
That is my understanding.
Then that makes
I didn't
sense.
read anything in here that says a portion or whatever. It just says, it almost sounds like all of it's gonna be
Yeah,
city.
so I, initially in talking with Mr. Sheehan, I had provided a template whereby he would be able to essentially spell out the size, well, that there would have to be certain dimensions of sign placed up there. And in saying that he wanted that to be removed, he said essentially what you're saying, that it would be at least one of the signs on the billboard, one of the 4.
Then that makes sense.
if it got blown down, can he only replace it in the form that it is, or could it be?
No, I believe, Mike, that we have it set in our sign ordinance that it has to be exactly what it was. I believe that's the way it is. Yeah, so it is the
And-
one on the
and
right. There is
that's-
four faces on it.
And being that utilities brought this up to your attention, I mean, are they fine with all that? It's city-owned property, not utility-owned property,
Mhm.
although they're both one of the
That's-
same?
That's correct, yes. I did talk with municipal utilities, with Todd Chambers, and he was agreeable to the way that it was, the way that it reads here.
So being it's an existing sign, it doesn't have anything to do with the moratorium we have on signs right now?
That is correct.
Really, so what if we say no? Does the sign come down, does the billboard come down?
We could absolutely demand it be taken down.
Because to me, that's the first question we gotta ask. We have a moratorium on billboard signs, but yet we're gonna have a city ad on a billboard sign within the city. It seems a little odd to me. Seems almost hypocritical to me, but.
Moratorium has to come to an end. That's gonna be one of my
Right, but the,
Okay, any other questions for Justin on this? We kind of know what the drift is of the thing.
It just,
So-
is it underneath of D then is when we're talking about city? I just don't see anything that specifies that what portion or one sign or anything. It just says, is that not confusing to anybody
It'll
else?
just be one of the 4. No. Well, if that's the thing, I mean, I would take it down. Why would you want to advertise?
No, I realize I don't,
Yeah.
but I just
Just
don't see anything in
or
this
take a-
agreement that spells
Take
that
a
out. that's all.
chainsaw and, but I think it'll be just one of the 4 signs. I think that's pretty understandable.
Yeah, it doesn't say that, though.
Wouldn't it behoove us to specify which?
Sure. You guys can change your motion so that you agree to this and just have one of the 4 as a sign for the city of Watertown. It could be anything. It could be your zoo, it could be your golf course, it could be your airline, it could be, yeah.
the agreement, Steve, it's not, it's stating the sign will be, and
Yeah.
that's,
So I think let's change the motion. Whoever made that motion, just amend it so that it is 25% of the sign. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can put that back in quite easily. That's
Okay.
really what was there before.
Okay. So do you want somebody to change their motion? Do you know, Shelley, who made that? Pardon? Yeah. You'll make that motion? So
Would-
Don
could
makes
I-
the motion so that it shows one of 4 panels is for the city of Watertown. And Beth will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 16, consideration of bids received for the 2017 sidewalk Accessibility Improvement Project. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike. Second by Beth. Shane, you want to show sidewalk?
Sure. This is our annual accessibility improvements project. We did receive bids on April 6, 2017. I won't claim it's a record number, but 7 bidders is the highest number of bidders on this sidewalk project in the near history of it. We did receive the low bid from Artistic Concrete LLC of Watertown, and the low bid amount was $199,801.50, which was 18% lower than the engineer's estimate of $244,725. The other bids ranged from $217,973 to, I have a typo there, $312,785. So a good spread on the bids. A portion of the work is intended to be paid by the Parks Department. Approximately $25,000 is the parks portion, and the remainder, $174,755, is the street department's budget. In my recommendation line, I do have a typo there. The award amount should be $199,801.50.
And
So with that,
Artistic has, we've been involved with Artistic before on 8th Avenue.
yeah, they did the work on 8th Avenue last summer, and they're a relatively new company, but I think we're a branch off from another company, and so we'll just work with them. I'm sure we can iron out any issues they may present, but we're looking forward to the project.
Any questions for Shane on this?
Is that still about what we normally budget? 'Cause last year, didn't we have some issues where we had to cut back or because of prices or?
Well, no, yes, a little bit. Not so much prices, but we had to take out more curb to make the ramps more. In other words, the ramp cutouts weren't good enough on the curb side, so we had to add extra curb to do the ramps correctly. We've identified that issue and corrected that through this plan, so we won't have that issue on this project. So should be good. We have enough budget. We do carry over a little bit annually when we can, because we don't use up all of our money in our co-op project where we have that cost share with the private citizens. So we do carry that over and make sure that we use that money on the next ADA ramp project. So that's where we're at. Thank you for the question.
Okay, so I do have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll look for council action on this. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to go step back just one little bit on the on number 14 for the service agreement with Great Plains. Shelley, we have talked about this, the dollars, where they're coming from on this, because it wasn't a budgeted item. Where is the suggestion to come from?
My suggestion would be to come from the Fund 203, the BBB third penny.
Third penny tag.
Right.
Very good. Okay. I knew we had talked about it, I just couldn't bring that up. Okay, any old business that we need to discuss? Before we go too far, I would like to express my condolences to the Jim Christensen family. Jim passed away here last week, very unexpectedly, and we're going to miss him dearly here at City Hall. Any other old business we need to
I
talk?
do have one, and it was on my mind before we start talking about the billboard. So where are we at with the moratorium on the signs?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the moratorium came off for a short period of time and is back on at this time.
Yeah,
So-
but where are we at with the ordinance? So
I'll
So-
let Justin.
The duration, Councilman, and I don't have the exact date. It's August 20 thereabouts is how long the moratorium will last. And it's the sooner of that date or there being the adoption of sign code ordinance.
well, that's my question is where are we at with the sign code ordinance?
Okay. So as it stands, we will be having a second public meeting this Thursday, 6 p.m., second floor, City Hall. There is talk of potentially having a third public meeting as well as a tour of the community with stakeholders and interested members of the public to actually go out and see some of these more trafficked areas where there's a lot of, more signs of various types to get a better handle visually on what maybe needs to be modified. So after that, I wish Councilman Bueller was able to be here to be able to talk a little bit more about kind of their process. But as it stands, beyond that third meeting, there's the potential that we will have a draft and be able to bring it before
So
the
we're
city
getting
council.
closer. I mean, this has a can been kicked down the road for a long time, so.
Yeah. I anticipate it being, addressed by the city council in advance of August.
Okay, thank you.
So.
And that can is beat up pretty bad. So anyhow, any other old business?
I do have one item. I put a letter on each of your positions prior to the meeting, and it is the status update for the drainage way in Eastwood's neighborhood. That letter is going to go out to the public that live in that neighborhood as their update. So just wanted to be clear on that. I was requested by Councilman Roby to make sure that got done, so this is what's going out to the public.
Very good, thank you. Any other old business?
Steve, I just have the one thing about the airport here. Got a nice email from a couple today that had just used the airport. Everything went great for them. She did say there was a concern by some people that were on that same air flight because they hadn't used Expedia. And she said if you use Expedia, you don't have to pick up your own luggage and move it to the next airport. And if you don't, then you have to pick up your luggage and go back through again to your destination. So she was just saying that maybe if people know that if they go through Expedia, then they don't have to do that. But she was very satisfied with everything. She said it went just great for them. So it's kind of fun to hear that our airplane is working out.
It's working great. And I think that, yeah, they didn't drag anybody out. But I do think that Expedia, Travelocity, and Orbitz all are the same way. If you use any of them, you will not have to handle your luggage. Anything else? Any new business that we need to discuss? Any liaison member reports that anybody wants to share? What's up, Bob? New business? Are you okay with that? Huh? Is it? I mean, it's got to be really quick because we got to go into executive session here too. It's going to be 10 o'clock.
Within 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll give you 2.5.
I'm 25 minutes past my bedtime anyway.
Okay.
So, and what it is, I had visited with Shelley quite some time ago in regard to where we stand in regard to open government within the city of Watertown. And when I got to reviewing Watertown versus the other 4 cities, I found out we were a little bit short in regard to one area within our open government, and that begins with elections. So what I did is I visited with the city of Brookings. They helped me put something together, talked with the Secretary of State. They suggested that I come in and visit with you folks directly, ask for one council member to go ahead and take the paperwork that I have here in my hand and present it back for adoption. And that's up to you to go ahead if you wish to. If you're not, then we'll basically know it. And what it basically reads is ordinance number, left that open for discussion, an ordinance establishing requirements for campaign financing disclosures for candidates for mayor and council members positions in the city of Watertown, South Dakota. With that is the ordinance, guidelines, and all the associated paperwork. All you do is plunk in the ordinance number where applicable, and the city of Watertown is ready to go. Now, I know with the way things are with the reading basis and stuff like that, it's far too late right now for the current election. So I would just ask that at some point here you would bring it forward for the future elections we do have. And since we only have one election currently that comes up right now, and that's for the city of mayor, I'd also ask that our current mayor and his opponent just voluntarily accept this and work within the realms that we put forward for this current election. And don't expect an answer right now. I would hope that the news media or somebody like that would ask you rather than me. 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm done. I'm out of here. This
All
is
right.
for Justin.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. Okay. Any liaison member reports? I do need to go into executive session. This is for contract negotiations. I believe there will be action taken after this. So I need a motion and a second to go into exec. Motion by John, second by Bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are in executive session.